Hello, everybody. I'm Nate. So I'm the founder of Appsembler. We're a Boston, or actually Somerville-based open edX solutions provider. Tonight we're very happy to have one of our customers, Intersystems, is going to be speaking on how they made the transition from a traditional instructor-led classroom and making the move to online training using open edX. And you guys have been around, what, 1978, did I read?
37 years.
37 years. How's that for a technology company? That's pretty amazing. So these guys have a lot of really cool technology selling primarily to the healthcare industry. I know you guys do other stuff, government, but
We're big hands.
Yeah. So I'll let them talk about their technology, but please welcome Jim, Janine, and Doug.
So, like Nate, I'm also Somerville-based. I grew up in Somerville, and I'm from Boston originally. And as I talk more, you'll probably get the accent come out a little bit more. So, Intersystems. How many read the little blurb about Intersystems on the Meetup? So, just so you have an idea. So we're a software company. We're right here in Kendall Square. We're in One Memorial Drive. Microsoft is in our building. And we specialize in database technology. Like we started off with our database. It's called Cache. It's an object-oriented database. But we have database platforms, and we have other products now. We have informatics. We also have a health information system. We're very big in healthcare, so we're known in healthcare. I think it's 9 out of the 10 top EMRs in the country are based on our software. So often people don't hear about us because we're under the covers, but you would definitely hear about our partners. We have over 100 million users around the world. We're actually in 25 countries, and we've been in business since for 37 years. And we've been profitable every year that we've been in business. We're privately held. Terry Reagan, also known as Philip Reagan, is the owner and president of Intersystems. So I don't want to go, it's not really a pitch for Intersystems. The reason we're here tonight is really to talk about this. It's transforming a business education culture from classroom to online learning. So I'm just going to do the intro, and then I'm going to pass off to my colleagues here. But I wanted to give you an idea of where we started. So we were like the traditional way of learning. So we had primarily classroom-based training, and we have them worldwide. And we really don't see that as going away, but we definitely know it's not scalable. And a lot of people aren't paying to come to training. It's also expensive for us to send trainers out. So there's a lot of problems with that, as you probably all know. And online is really the way that we need to go, and we recognize that as a company. But it's not an easy shift in culture because we've been so used to having classroom training. So there's a lot of challenges with just having classroom training, and it's a different way, it's a really different pedagogy of learning than online learning. So we realized in order for us to move into what our customers really need is really to change our culture. So we also have some self-paced online tutorials, they come with a product, or if you came to our website, you could actually do those. But they're not really interactive, they're not fun, they're not like what you see in MOOCs. And one thing that we're here really to talk about is, the MOOC model didn't work for us because we're corporate-based, so a lot of our customers, there's some proprietary information, so we couldn't just put stuff out on edX in MOOCs. Because it would violate some of our NDRs, as well as it doesn't meet all the needs of our customers, especially in healthcare. And we do a lot of government work as well, so there's a lot of restrictions on what even just websites they can access. So we're going to go into that a little bit. We got into videos probably, how many years ago? 5? Something like that. So we started doing online videos. So we created a video portal, and we have that up on our website. And that was really valuable. We've got a lot of good feedback about that. But it's really not the full way of learning. We really believe on hands to the keyboard, like if we're teaching you software, how to use our software, how to integrate with our integration platform. We really want to have people work with our software, so it's not just watching a video or doing a self-paced tutorial. And that was also a challenge when we got into edX, because we wanted to make sure that how can we pull our product in so that people can use our products. And we'll be talking a little bit about that and how we did, what the solution to that was. We also have lots of documentation. And I think one of the biggest problems for our company, and we hear this from other companies too, is for people to be able to find what they need when they need it. So we said, okay, that's really the biggest challenge. So they don't want to read through all the documentation. They want to Google, get up to a video and find out what they want to learn right away, or get a quick online course. So that's what we work towards. So we decided, as a company, we needed to create what we call a culture of learning. So it's a real shift in the entire company. So if we start thinking, we want our employees to really understand that everybody should be learning and everybody should be contributing. So it's not just, the education department. Because if you start thinking about learning objects, we say, well, it's not just training, education that produces learning, like documentation produces learning. Marketing is another form of learning. What developers put out around their, code is learning. So that everybody has a real role in learning. So we wanted to say, so we need to build this culture of learning, but we had to explain, so what really is a culture of learning? And this is what we came up with. It's a place where employees excel at creating, acquiring, and transferring knowledge. And for us, it's like, okay, we can do that, but how do we do that? Like, what's the best tool? And that's where we came up with edX as being one of those great tools. One thing I do want to talk about, like 3 building blocks of learning organization. And these are things, I'm not going to go into this deeply. You can go, there's all kinds of theory behind this, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about this. And we are doing this, but we're here tonight to talk more about how we're using edX and how it works as a corporate solution as opposed to just being out there as a MOOC. You really do need a supportive learning environment, and that is part of your culture, so it's not really an online environment. It's, does your boss encourage you to learn? Do we give time for employees to learn? If you were to speak out and say, this is something new and I think we should learn it, how does management look upon that? Is that a bad thing or is that a good thing? So you really do need a learning environment that's very supportive to be successful in a company. Concrete learning processes and practices. This is something that Janine and Doug are really working on. Like, you really do need processes and you do need practices around learning. Otherwise, it can be very willy-nilly and it gets away from you. So there definitely is intentional learning that needs to happen for employees. And it should be tracked, and employees should know what kind of things are available to them, encouraged to do, and how does it show up in HR. Leadership behavior that reinforces learning. And again, I think this is really where senior management comes in and says, yeah, we need to create policies, we need to create practices, we need to encourage our people to learn, and we need to give them the time to learn, and we need to give them the tools to learn. And the more that we can do that, the more successful our company is going to be. And that's what we have found, even through classroom training. So this is more the focus of tonight's talk is, okay, so what did we do? So we wanted online learning, and we wanted it for our customers as well as our customers' internal. So if you think of our offer is learning, we have internal customers, so our employees, our colleagues, as well as our customers who are out there, who we need to learn how to use our technology in order to build applications and to sell it so that we can stay in business. And we know that in today's culture, people want to learn something whenever they want it, like anytime, any place, and as quick as they can get it, and as quick as they can absorb it and learn it. So that's what we aim to build, and that's what we have built. So knowledge that you need now, 24/7. So materials for new and experienced users. So we knew it was not just new stuff that we're building, like our new technologies. Every time we come out with a new version or a new product, it's not just that. It's actually for new and experienced, like it's everything. So someone that might have been an early Cache user, like maybe they're on one of our older versions of Cache, we want to make sure that they can get to those materials as well as people who are running our most current versions of our software. And designed for continuous incremental learning. So it can be something quick, or it can be something that's part of what we would call a learning path or a learning track. So if you want to get something quick, learn how to do something with a piece of our product, you don't want to have to go through the whole course. We want you to be able to access that. Or if you want to learn the whole thing, we want to give you the opportunity to do that as well. And courses online now. So we have a number of courses that are online now, and I'm going to let my other colleagues talk about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Janine to give you an idea of where we are currently. So Janine Perkins.
Okay, so we started building courses around this time last year. We had a big push for creating courses for our global summit, which is typically around March or April, and we've continued building courses from there. The courses that we built are typically, or are different than the typical edX course, where all of our courses are self-paced, where when I look at edX.org, a lot of the courses have a start date and an end date and have moderation throughout. I have seen more self-paced courses start to appear in the catalog, but for us right now our focus is self-paced only. I think eventually we would like to get to some blended learning, but right now this is our main focus. So our courses consist of various videos, so that would be like a head and shoulders type video, or screencasts where those are mainly demonstrations of our software in some way, or simulations. So people getting hands-on practice, not necessarily touching the actual software. We also have quizzes throughout. So those are, we don't necessarily report on how people are doing yet in terms of reporting to management on whether people are passing or failing certain tests. Right now the quizzes are used for knowledge checks. So people are going through the material, and it kind of helps them determine if they're really grasping the material. We've also included online labs, which I'll talk more about in a few minutes. So I'll also talk about how we built some custom learning paths, and again, I'm going to talk about the labs. So this is our main site, and it's a public site. Anybody's welcome to go to this site and take a look at our courses. So right now, as far as our main site, we have a few things that are missing that we'd like to implement, hopefully with the next version of edX when we upgrade. So right now, it's mainly just all of our courses, all of our public courses. We do have some hidden courses that when you go to the main site, you won't see our internal-only courses, and you won't see any invitation-only courses. Once you log in, you'll, depending on what your email address is, the interface may look, or the catalog will look a little different. So once we move to the next version of edX, we hope to implement a more robust search as well as a way to sort the courses, so by technology or by user or role. So one of the ways we've customized edX is to implement microsites, and we've done two different versions of microsites. This is an example of us working with a customer that we developed all of the courses specifically for this customer, and they had different levels of users, and so the way that we made it easy for the different users to find the content that they needed to go through was just a numbering system. And we also worked with a graphic design company to design a very user-friendly page. So they design the content, or they design the pages, and then we hand off the pages to Appsembler, who then implements them on edX. The other type of microsite that we implemented was to allow us to still focus on one customer, but also to implement what we call a learning path. So the learning path allowed us to guide people through a series of courses. So it's a series of 7 courses, and all of these courses together help them meet one goal. So this is a way for us to visually walk people through the sequence of courses. And if they click enroll on this page, they do get enrolled in all 7 courses. So when they go to their dashboard, they're going to see all 7 courses listed there. If they ever aren't sure, and want to see the descriptions, this page is always available. There's a learning path link up at the top. Right now, the way it works is this is just a visual representation within edX. So it doesn't track the usage or the access to the courses as a whole in terms of all 7 courses together. We would like to get to there as far as reporting at some point. So we'd like to know how many users are getting through the whole learning path. Are people only getting to course 3 and stopping because it's too long? So this learning path, some of the courses are 10 minutes, some of them are 30, and there's a couple that are over an hour, which is a lot of content, but it's very technical content that the users are really excited to get, but it's whether we're teaching it in a way that's keeping their attention. What we're doing for this initiative is we haven't launched this piece yet, but we're working with Marketo software, which is marketing software. So what's going to happen is when we send out a launch email, there's 2 different paths. So if people, once they get the launch email, if they have enrolled in the session, they're going to get a welcome email and give them a little bit of information about the course. If they haven't accessed the course or any of the courses, within edX in 5 days, they're going to get a reminder email. And there's a series of emails every 5 days. And then if they do finish, there's a congratulations email. And there's different motivational information. We do have a date that's set for people to go online and give us feedback about the course and different reasons why they would need or want to learn the technology that's taught in the course. Am I forgetting anything on that?
You might want to just mention the integration with edX. That edX is actually
Oh,
talking
right.
back to Marketo
Yes.
to let Marketo know if
Right.
the person has completed the course or if they haven't.
Right.
know
So
what-
that's the major part. Is it's Marketo is every time someone interacts with edX, it's sending a message to Marketo and triggering the different messages. So another major customization that we've implemented are online labs, which has been really well received from our audience. So within a course, down the left, they'll go through a typical course, but at certain intervals, they'll see a link for an online lab. And so this is saying launch HealthShare in Cloud9 site. So once they click that, it launches an online container, which has all of our software for that particular exercises loaded on it. They're able to log in and interact just as they would if they had it loaded on their own computer. So this allows them to access our software without having to deal with licenses or any software. So it was definitely a struggle and a big project to get it all working. It's partly understanding kind of how all our technology needs to be set up within a container. There was a lot of trial and error, but right now we have a lot of different courses. There's 2 courses in that learning path that I showed earlier that have containers. People are going through a lot of different testing right now.
And I'll just to kind of play on that. One of the things we've learned is you're much better off playing with the container and figuring out what you can do with it before you write a course that's designed to do a whole bunch of stuff that you really can't do in your container. So we are looking back. This is one of the things where we pulled a lot of lessons learned that when we look back on it, we say, hey, we've got to build that concept in, but have some guidelines of what you should do. And because there are certain things that can, to run some of our tools and to really do some of the technical stuff, you're basically giving someone admin access to the Linux container for a period of time, and that's generally bad. I mean, most of our customers were assuming they're good people and they're not going to do anything horrible with the container. But again, we've learned a number of things that we would want to go back and design different exercises. But when done right, the key is they spin up quick. We can put examples and code segments already in there so that when we're teaching, we can give an example, say, load this into the portal, do this, play with it, and they can actually write some of their own code. They can play with it. They can go off script, which is great from a learning point of view, but also horrible from a teaching point of view. Because, again, we're teaching a big concept, so it's usually not one exercise. It's 9 or 10 that build on top of each other. So another thing to keep in mind instructionally that we're building into some of this is when they go off script and because you always take your code segments and you do the code that they say, and then you say, well, hey, I get it. Like, what if I did this, and what if I did this? And you slowly break the example that we've done, and we get to exercise 3 or 4, and you've gone so far off script that it doesn't work. And then you call us, you send us an email saying it doesn't work. So that's another thing that we're working on is how do you guide people, either whether we need 7 more containers so that if you get in trouble on exercise 7, stop, go grab this fresh container that has the example as we laid it out that we know works, and start over again. And this is something that in the classroom instructors can walk over and refresh something, load new examples or see, oh, you did this, but when you set it up, we had one just today, you had a space in the end in the command, and that screwed up the variable and it didn't run. And it was one of our instructors that was walking through their code to try to figure it out. And we don't want that, right? So that's it's really, really great, and very, very kind of dangerous from an instructional design point of view. So it's a big thing that we're playing with.
Yeah, we definitely have to work out how to support the environment in terms of, as people are going through, who are the right people to work on, figuring out where they went wrong in their code. We also have all of the containers set for a 2-week expiration, just so we're using the containers effectively. As people go through and maybe take a break and come back a week later, their containers may have expired. Initially, we had to go through Appsembler to restart the containers, but what they did is they built an administrative interface for us, so now we can do that ourselves. We can find their container, set it for another expiration date, and go from there. We have expiration dates to utilize them effectively, but also to motivate people to complete the exercises within a certain amount of time. But we found that 2 weeks was the best, because if it was 1 week, they definitely would probably hit expiration if they took a break. I think that was all mine, right? Uh-oh.
So, yeah. So, where are we headed? So I have a couple of bullets, but I should preface this by saying that, am I supposed to stand over here on the star for Nate? You should, I'm real new to the edX space, and actually InterSystems, so I started in September. So I've been brought in to really help build the online production capacity. But so edX for me was brand new at that time. So if I'm using terms that don't make sense to you in edX, feel free to stop me. So my background, though, is corporate training. So I've been in the corporate L&D space for 20 years now. Worked at a learning management system company and an e-learning development company. So I've done all kinds of different things, but all very corporate, not higher ed or K-12. So some of the things that we're looking to do. So I kind of came in and started looking at edX, and I was looking at it from my corporate LMS mindset. So I immediately started saying, oh, hey, where's my course catalog? How do I assign things? Can I do learner profiles and skills and competencies and all of this, all the great ideas that I had. And I jumped into edX and kind of had, a little bit of a frustrating couple days as I looked at that. I've come around, but really what we're looking to do, we're going to be continuing to develop our courses in edX, but we are looking at implementing another LMS kind of alongside of it. Right? Because at this point, some of the things that we want to do, I can't wait to develop it in edX, whereas I can go out and get another LMS that does it today, or at least comes much closer. So some of the things specifically that you heard us talk about, using learner profiles to recommend courses. So having people come in that have a specific profile, either the company that they're coming from, the title that they have, having them fill out their own profile so that we can automatically recommend courses to them. So I come from much more of a formal push model rather than an academic pull where you look through the catalog and decide what you want. I want to say to you, okay, you are a lead developer working in these tools. Here's everything you need to do to be fully competent in that. Or you're a brand new sysadmin at this company and you're supposed to monitor and manage all the databases and productions. Here's everything that you need to do to be able to do that. And there's so much information that letting them just kind of figure out what they want to do doesn't quite do it. Right? So
We talked about lots, it's like 40,000 pages of documentation if you look across all of the products. You don't want a sysadmin doing that. We have great documentation like on our backups, but when you look at all of the options you have on how to set up backups, if you don't do them right, especially in a high availability environment, you may not always be backing up everything that you think you are. So just reading the documentation doesn't always teach you the best practices, or here's what you need. We need to make sure you've learned certain things before you go in and do that. Like what is journaling that we do? What is the difference in mirroring? Or how do we set up some of those, and how does that impact what you want to put in one of the boxes? They know what to put in the box, but they don't always make the right choice. So we want to be a little more prescriptive in that. So looking at a competency and skill-based curricula where people can say, I want to be a sysadmin at some certain level, and we can lay out a set of courses for that. And then if their job changes, we need the LMS to remember what skills they've already obtained, so that then they don't have to go back and retake courses. Again, we're teaching pretty broad product. So to teach you as a starting sysadmin, you'd still get an overview of all of the tools, and then you'll start diving deeper into some of the sysadmin stuff. If you move to a different role, you don't need the overview again. You're going to go just straight down and deep. Or somebody that's already experienced, maybe has been to our classroom, wants to come straight into certain courses or certain modules within the course. So those are the types of things we're kind of struggling with. Our concept right now, though, is continuing to use edX for the content, because we've developed in it. We've got people that know how to use it and pump out courses. So using LTI to launch the edX content. So we're able to use another LMS to help probably more in the tracking and assignment, but then using edX to be able to render out some of that. So this little picture down here is really just to show you we're coming from a spot where we have a ton of different pieces. So we have our own documentation, we have an existing video portal, we have a new developer community, which is going to be a social site that's developing content. And really, one of the things we're looking to do with this LMS is build a bit of the portal that allows you to search across both sets of content. So edX is one of the boxes that you're going to be able to search across when you want formal content. But our goal is also, if you're searching for how do I do backups, that will give you a course on here's 30 minutes if you've never done a backup before, here's everything you need to think of to do backups. But also, if you know how to do it, just remind me, here's a 4-minute video on setting up backups, and here's the detailed documentation on setting up backups. So being able to let them search through all of that, and then they can pick. Our dream scenario is, of course, machine learning in that, so it's going to learn the paths, and people upvote things, and it gets smarter and smarter. But we'll be back in a couple of years to talk about that. The other thing, and one of the things I really like about edX is the XML-based format that Studio uses. So we've talked to some of the folks at MIT and their lore and things like that, and have learned that, how XML-ish. But really the concept for me, because it's an open development tool, I feel much better that as we're developing hours and hours of content in it, that we can get the content back out. The other thing that we're doing is we're looking at an XML tool set, really because today all of our documentation is written in XML. So it's written so that our tech writers don't have to think about any of the presentation. They just write. They have a tool to help them mark it up in XML, and then they can publish it or release it, and that can get rendered to a PDF file or active HTML that you can go into and search. So we're working on like improving all of that search, but really the concept is we're trying to merge all of this together. So instead of having people sitting there writing documentation and then another group sitting there writing in Studio, ideally what's happening is they're writing XML that might have good examples of, here's a code example, here's steps to set up your backup. We should be able to pull those into Studio. And right now what we do, if we know that it's over there, we copy and paste into Studio, right? Which anytime you do that, you just, a little part of you inside, I see some people kind of cringing, right? It's like, we shouldn't have to copy and paste. It's XML over here, and it's some sort of XML over here. So that's the big thing that we're looking at. Even if it's more handed off, we recognize I don't necessarily want any time a documentation person changes a page of documentation on version 2015.3 that our edX course automatically changes. That kind of scares me. But we want the ability to know this documentation changed. Here's the edX components that you put it in. You pulled it into this course and this course. How is it used? Or even, the ideal scenario is we know how often it's used, so you link to some of the analytics. So we can make the decision, do we need to go and change that yet? Because we don't have enough resources, and sometimes we change little pieces of code that 90% of the people don't care about. So changing the example in the course may not really matter that. They'll still learn what they need to learn, and then they'll go into the new version and the field name will be a little different, but they'll be able to do it. So that's our big thing in trying to look at that XML-based documentation. So that's the part that I'm really like in Studio. So we're becoming probably more of a Studio user and less of edX as an LMS. But that's part of what we want to try to look at is what do we need to do. So some of the things that we're looking to figure out how to do in edX, and I know some of it's kind of on the roadmap in different flavors, is the ability to build learning paths. So even what we've got now are simple things, and I know there's some work being done on programs, I think it is, where you can layer courses together. But again, really what we're looking for is getting to the level of competency or skill-based learning paths, because we have people that come in that already have certain skills. So if we have a learning path set up for being a sysadmin, but you already have the first levels of skills, we don't want you to have to go through the whole thing. But I also don't want to have to develop, here's a learning path for a sysadmin for somebody that's never used our technology. Here's a learning path for a sysadmin that's used our technology but not been a sysadmin. Here's one for, you'd have to build 4 or 5 versions of just one learning path, and then we'd have to maintain all of those as we updated our courses. And then because of that, it's also the ability to track progress through those paths. So for our customers, what we're looking to be able to do is know who's been through an entire learning path. So from a couple points of view, for us, from a pedagogy point of view, we want to know maybe we made it way too complex, or maybe everybody skips this one course because nobody cares about it. We want that feedback. But we're trying to help our customers be as successful as they can. So our customers want to know, hey, how many people have gone through this? Who's qualified? Who's close to that? And we actually, the goal is to be able to give some of our customers the ability, when we talk about microsites, we want a customer to have their own view into a site so that they can go in as, if you're the technical manager of a team, you should be able to see what they're currently trained in or assign them new training. You want to give somebody development training, you're going to move them to be a sysadmin, or you're going to move them to do complex data transformations. Here's what I need to teach them. And ideally, our customer can do that. They don't have to call us and say, hey, Janine, can you go into the LMS and manually assign these 3 courses, which is basically what we're doing now. Or mass upload, we have the other, hey, Nate, here's 600 people to load into edX. Can you load them in and automatically assign them the 7 courses that are on this learning path? Neither of those are great for us. So that's kind of the multiple catalogs, because again, for certain customers, we may have built some custom code or custom modules for them. So we're going to do some training for them that only they see. We have certain products that we've developed training for, but they're somewhat proprietary, so they're not in our open catalog. They only are available to customers that own that technology, because we don't want to teach everybody how to use that technology. So again, that ability to have multiple catalogs that we're controlling different domains, something better than just one. We can do some of that with kind of one domain restriction, but really we're doing in a site, we could have a couple of partners that have developed something for a customer. And then there's some things that I've done in the past from a partner development. We have a partner that's developing something. They have multiple customers. And I think some of the insights at the edX conference, they had done some of this. It's like, I want to give one of our partners, if they're supporting 3 or 4 different customers, they should have access to be able to see, how are their customers trained, what's happening. So that level, I know that gets, I'm not even sure I can do that with fancy schnazzy LMSs, but moving towards that model are some of the things that we're looking to do. And it's really more because of some of our corporate requirements. So really, what we're looking to do is find others with similar issues. We're out here trying to see, are there... No, I should have asked in the beginning. So how many people here are working more in the corporate space? Do I get any hand? 2, 3? Okay. Well, great to meet you. We should talk afterwards. But there are not a lot of companies playing with Open edX heavily in the corporate space. Yeah?
What you described is very similar to what happens in universities in terms of you have an undergraduate class and they need to take Math 101 before they take Math 201. But some people test out of Math 101 because they took high school or whatever. And then those people go into grad school and they have a set of things under them so they have their level 2 sysadmin. And so there's also parallels in education.
Well, and that's I see a lot of this being built. I know people are looking at competency-based, they're looking at adaptive. The more universities are going online, the possibility, it becomes easier to do that in the online world than when they were strictly classroom-based. So I shouldn't say, that's what I think we're looking to find other companies. It's just others, right? I think that's one of the neat things about edX is there are lots of people using it in very different ways, but some of the needs are the same because it's all adult learning, right? We want the best adult learning that we can get, but to try to do it quickly, right? Or not too much at once. And I think that's one of the things we definitely struggle with. Some of our basic classroom courses are 5 days. 40 hours of sitting in there hammering and lots of exercises. lots of help, and the instructors have the ability to go, oh, you're actually working in finance, not healthcare. Well, let me reach into my bag of tricks, because there's an instructor. Here's some finance examples, right? And they can do that for you and give you a great experience. It'll be great feedback for people coming out of the classes. And we're trying to do that online, but there's no way anybody online is going to go sit for 40 hours straight learning. We'd all just go buggy and throw the laptop out the window. But what we're helping people do is, it's not easy. Right? You know, we do certain things where we're teaching people about how to use our tools to build mobile apps. Well, you need to know Angular, you need to know Node.js, and there's a whole bunch of other tools that you need to know that we're going to assume you know before we jump in, and then we're layering on top of that. So that's not a 7-minute video. There's, it's 20 or 30 7-minute videos strung together, and an exercise running in parallel with that. So that's the complexity that we're trying to deal with. So it does get, we do the massive part, but just a slightly different model. So that's really, I think that's really it, right? So really, we want to say thank you, and we should do more questions. We probably talked too much through it, but we'd love to talk about what, in some of that, either what did we really mean. I'd love to hear what you guys are kind of struggling with if you're doing different pieces of this. But thanks to Nate and Ned and the folks here at edX for hosting, and pizza, whoever buys the pizza, thank you. Pizza. Pizza. And pie. So, what questions do you have about what we're doing, or
other ideas?
Other ideas, like when you look at some of these things, any of you guys building like more learning paths and programs? I know people are working on it.
Yeah, I can speak to that briefly.
Okay.
So,
Who are you?
my name's Marco. I'm the product owner and interim designer for the commerce team
At edX.
at edX. Probably more important later. I'll get there eventually. Ned will help me out. So the team is currently working on broader platform support for something we call on edX.org xSeries programs. And so what that means is it's one of the places where we're actually pushing for this IDA, sort of independently deployable app model of building out functionality into the platform. So there's a separate repository and service called the program service that more generically represents a sequence of courses and all the given course runs inside the courses that make up the xSeries. So for example, I want to learn about data science, and there are 3 courses in data science, and they're each going to be run 3 times in the next year. That constitutes an xSeries. So completing any one of those runs of one of those courses gets that checkbox. And then for us, when you complete an xSeries program, you also earn a separate certificate. So essentially what this separate service is doing is letting us do the configuration in this separate app. But from a consumption standpoint, it looks to you as an author like it's in Studio. So you'll have courses, libraries, programs. And we're focusing on building out a program of type xSeries. So what that means is the core program service has kind of a plug-in model where we've added the business logic for what constitutes an xSeries for us. But you could really easily imagine writing a custom sort of business logic that looks at the catalog and says, grab a program of type, whatever your sort of, maybe an audience in your case, like a different kind of verticals or other things. So that's a sort of separate layer on top of programs, and that becomes a different type of program. But anyways, from a consumption experience on the student side, the last thing I'll say is that students can see when they enroll in a course if it's associated with the xSeries program. And for now, that actually links to our separate marketing site, so that's sort of the first pass. But we're building in-platform pages that represent the whole program as a dedicated page, showing you progress towards the certificate. So that's the summary, and I can share around the sort of pages that we have documenting it further.
So, but that's not in the open edX side.
So yeah, the program service part is the fact that the xSeries kind of program label that we have on top of it. That's why we did that model where it's the plugin that applies to business logic. So the core program service is being built with OpenEdX in mind, and will be, I think, tentatively in sometime in the next couple months. So I don't know if it'll make it into Dogwood, but it'll be close.
I would guess.
Okay.
So how does the student track their progress? Is there a separate site that is sort of tracking students?
So essentially the way it works is from any of those courses you enroll on the dashboard, you can see, hey, this is a part of an xSeries. And clicking through to that will give you the dedicated page for that xSeries. Shows you all the courses that are in the xSeries, whether or not you're currently enrolled in them. So let's say you're only enrolled in one of them. For the next one, you might say, I want to select the run in March, or I want to select the run the next one, hit enroll. And then as you complete those courses, that page on the right updates to say, so like green progress bar kind of getting you towards that certificate. Once you complete all 4 of those courses, you then have access to that special xSeries certificate.
Is there any reason why a self-paced course would be included in our program?
We will have xSeries that launch very soon on the site that have self-paced courses. So yeah, you'll be able to do the whole end-to-end. So for those of you familiar with there's a certificates kind of automated, not automated, a certificate configuration effort that was done recently in courses. So that'll also be in the Programs app. So those are both going to have certificates. And as a result of the fact that those certificates are now being put in 2 places, that's being split out of the course concept entirely, and is now a separate credential service as well. So those are kind of the 2 programs being spun up to support these use cases. So again, I'm sure there's maybe more questions. I can definitely link to technical questions or documentation as well. That's helpful.
Great.
So the easiest way for me to ask this question is you're trying to create a comprehensive online training system. Was that? And the extreme version of that would be that you take somebody in who's a new hire from the mailroom, and you put them through a series of online courses, and the end result is he or she becomes president of the company.
A lot of courses.
A lot of courses.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you're more focused on like system and things like that. But to what extent? I mean, you sort of raised this yourself, but to what extent do you find that the online piece can do what you're trying to accomplish? Is there like a 5% or a 40% or something X factor that's not included and has to be brought in some way from the outside? Maybe a live trainer, I don't know.
So yes, I'll tell you conceptually. So we're in the process of doing an exercise now of how do we take someone, and we did assume that they're a developer / analyst level. And we're going to take them, so we have a tool that sends HL7 messages, and we said, okay, we've got, customer lost a developer, they need to get someone else up to speed in 2 weeks on these HL7 message production. What do you do? What do we send them to? And the answer is, well, they could do about 2 weeks of classes, but they can't come to class. Okay, so here's all of the steps. As we've gone through that exercise, what we've learned, and I actually, we have a user story called Pat, and Pat, gets in trouble and needs to go through this, and so the first part of the exercise, we kind of looked at all of the different assets we have, and I locked myself in my home office for 9.5 hours going through videos and courses that we had to try to teach myself. The answer is you can do it, but I learned to the level where I could tell you a little bit of what to do, but I'm never really going to be allowed to put it in development. So what we're now looking at instructionally is this combination of how do we teach, how do we do this exercise, so a building exercise along, and then also a learn about your instance. Most of our customers, they don't have one developer sitting there, they've got 10 developers. Some of them have been doing it for a while. So we're trying to build this, okay, learn about the overall architecture of our solution. Here's an exercise to help you kind of get a feel for that. And then here's a learn about your instance, where we're not necessarily doing an exercise, we're giving you a checklist. Go meet with the existing admins and learn the IP address. You're going to need to do the next site, you need to know the IP address of your servers, their names, domain. Here's a list of 10 things you should ask somebody that's already doing it. Come back, take a basic course on our I/O and message routing, and then here's an exercise of how to do it. Now, go talk to your developers and say, what message routers do you have? Can you give me an example of a message that you use? We teach them data transformations, we have them do some, and then you go and say, what transformations do we do here? And some of this, what we're getting, so today, a lot of what happens, we have sales engineers that go, when a new developer is getting up to speed, will sit with the customer, and they know everything the customer is really doing. And really, well, officially, they don't train people. We know they do a lot of training. But what they're good at is they know how to train people on, here's the customizations that you guys put in place. Where here's, there's they taught you how to do it this way, but we don't do it that way. We do this and this. So that's something we're trying to figure out in this, is how do we build exercises that are much more about, now go into your go into your test environment, go talk to people and learn what you really do, learn these things, and then come back and we'll teach you the next level.
I mean, it's almost like one of the subclasses would have to be this may not seem like it links, but I think it's important, how to manage the office politics in your particular company, which of course is never going to be put into a course because nobody's going to, it's not going to happen.
One thing I would say, just to remind everyone, is we're sort of young in this process, so we're learning as we go. What I've come across is a lot of really use case scenarios and when it becomes best practices. So it's not just learning the technical side, but what are the best practices for the person who holds that role? If you're looking at medical devices, medical software, there's a lot of things that I really don't think classroom training goes away, and you need to look at some blended learning solutions. So put as much as we can online. We realize that we're going to need to augment that with some, classroom, or maybe it's virtual classroom, or there's different ways you can do that, and we're exploring some of those ways. So that's where we would love to hear from other people. And we are, polling our users to say, so what's going to be the best way for you to learn? Because everybody's a little different in how they learn anyway, so we need to be ready for those different situations. But I think you're right. And what we find, too, is even though people use our products, every instance is different. Like, it's a different business case, and they need to know something specific about a vertical and how they're using our products.
We're also trying to figure out a prioritization process. So there's so many people in our company that are interested in having their content put into online learning. Where sometimes and we have just a very small department. We had one case where a customer couldn't attend a training, or we canceled it because there wasn't enough people. And they started talking about updating this whole training, which was going to be a big undertaking, this online video, and it was it would take a lot of production time, and just people are used to, here's a problem, fix it. But then I asked the question, well, how many people are actually going to take this? And it was one person. So, we just have to make sure that we're evaluating and spending our time in the right places. And it's something we have to teach the company too, and teach our staff, is to ask those questions and figure out, how many people are able to teach that? What would be the long-term value of creating that content?
This may be a different question, but are you going toward any kind of an online, change that, to a reward system for accomplishment? Are you thinking about that? Are the companies that you're
We're
working with
thinking about it, but
that?
it's not on our.
Yeah.
Not there yet.
Right.
Yeah, we're looking at certification, and there are definitely some roles that need that, especially in the healthcare realm. And then we're also looking at how do you incentivize learning? And a lot of times it's just giving badges or certificates or online, identity. So we're looking at that as well.
Do you have requirements? I mean, we actually have certain requirements where you got to do this training or you won't be here the next day. I mean, we have yearly requirements that we have to do, and so those are some of the things that we're not building courses around those. Those tend to just be online and real training. But at least one of the groups that we're working with wants to use the courses that we're creating for that to fulfill some of those learning requirements.
Yeah, we haven't come quite to that yet because 90% of our training is external. And we can't put those restrictions on. But we are, I think, more working with our HR division to do some more of that.
Have you used the platform for any onboarding training, or has it been just skill training?
Yes. So we have a whole support division, but we haven't. Again, we're very young in it, so we've done parts of it for onboarding, and that's where we see the real value of online learning is, when you have turnover or you teach them the same thing over and over again. So, like Janine was saying, the majority of use, how often is it going to be used?
Because we've had different departments in the company kind of do their own. Like our support department, they created a ton of videos. They taught a session once, they videotaped it, and they interspersed exercises and a mentor who was paired with that person. And that model has worked really well. We're trying to give them a way to formalize that and also allow other departments to see it because they're not even aware of it. They could use that same model very effectively.
And I think that's, when Jim talked a bit about the culture of learning, one of the things that we're trying to get to is that practically the culture of teaching. Because what we're finding when we go through the company is support has some great ways that they teach a new support person how to get up to speed, because the support person needs to get up to the speed to the level of the customer and then really quickly go way beyond because they're troubleshooting. So they go deeper in the covers of here's 7 things that could go wrong if the customer does something silly. So they've got a ton of training, and part of what we're looking at, like when we looked at the XML tool and way to search, is for us to, in some cases, grab supports information or the sales engineers, the information that they have, don't turn it on for the customers, but have that in our database to search and curate, right? So if a support engineer is like, oh my God, this is the 5th time this week I answered a question on this, so a lot of them create little cheat sheets that they send around within the support team of, hey, here's an issue, here's what I do. So we're like, well, I want them. It's like, if you're answering that all the time for a customer, we should be teaching them or making it available so that they can find it. And that's the culture that we're trying to go to, like in the developer community, so we can post things that people search for, but that we start kind of creating content. And then as the learning team, we need to curate it, right? So we're going to go out and search for the support videos. I've looked through some of them. They're great for an internal person, but they're kind of raw because it's like Nate's video, right? It's somebody stood up and talked during a lunch and learn, and they're like, hey, that's great. And they put it on the shared drive and say, go, hey, new guy, go take a look at it. We can't use that for the customer, but some of them, you watch it, and you could watch it, kind of transcribe here the 5 things that they talked about, and very quickly then turn and do, take what they talked about for 20 minutes and try to distill it down into a good 4-minute, here are the key things that you need to do.
It sounds like you've got a knowledge management problem more than anything else. Like there needs to be one person in your organization who's aware of like the content. I mean, you've got all this content, And as long as you keep thinking about it in these silos, like that support content, this is training content, it's always going to be disparate. It's always going to be disconnected.
Yeah.
There's no
Right now-
platform that's going to solve that.
Yeah, we're actually in a movement right now to, we're looking at it as just learning content and reusable content. And it doesn't matter if it comes from support, education, documentation, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, but it sounds like it's sales support. It's right. It's everything, right? So
It's
not,
really everything.
It's not learning.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's learning, right? But I think if you, as soon as you start silos, and then it's territories, and then you're never going to have. So then the documentation in your support, when it gets updated, you won't know that it's been updated to update the learning content because it's not thought of as the same content.
Yeah, it's managing content.
Yeah.
And that's one of the moves when we talk about this learning culture, that's what we're trying to talk about is how do we do that? How do we get the product managers, when they're planning out products, that they're, if they think through a use case, we want it, right? Because they think through a use case, it's like, well, we need to teach to that use case. QD, testing, wants that use case because they're going to test to that use case, rather than each of us comes up with a slightly different use case that we spend our own time thinking about. It's how do we try to do it once and then move it down the line and reuse it. But yeah, that's way way beyond even just edX, right? That's a whole separate process.
This is back to, you were talking about building learning paths based on customer profiles. Have you thought about using any kind of a pre-testing sort of mechanism instead? Especially if we're talking about skill-based, if I say, for instance, I can imagine an instance where I say, yes, I've been a sysadmin for 5 years, but there might still be things that I'm either doing wrong or don't know, and then you do a pre-test, and then it spits out, these are the skills or competencies that you need help on, here are the courses associated, and you can make each course like a skill-based course as opposed to...
So in an ideal world, yes. We're still at the point where I barely have the content to match up to that. So right now, one of the ways we're looking at even this learner profile is, there's you do it with, effectively a test. Have you done this? Do you know this? Here, if you answer these 5 questions, you use it as if it's been a test, and then you build on top of that. But especially when we start talking about doing certification programs and so on, become a certified partner or certified developer, because that would be so big, we would want you to start down that path with a pretest so you don't waste, you don't get assigned 100 courses, right? You whittle it down to some smaller number. I'd say we've done more of that for talent development within our company. Yeah. So we've done proficiency assessments and said, oh, okay, so this is where your gaps in knowledge are, and you should do these things. It's a little different with customers. When you're going to go educate a doctor, they're not too happy if you ask them to do a proficiency assessment beforehand. But it really is a good tool. So wherever we can, we hope to do that.
You need to change the name of it. You need to approach them differently with
They're
something that they're willing to.
No, it's really interesting how you approach
The problem there
people.
is that they tend to be less, when you work in academia, faculty tend to be more into the learning culture. Doctors are not. They think they've learned it all.
They don't want to learn online either. They don't want to be with anybody else. It's like a one-on-one. That's a whole other story.
The learning path design I find particularly attractive. The way it was presented. My question is, can the software give us a window into the cost factor of the path that a particular user takes? And I say that in the context of learning has a lot to do with exploration. You can have a user going down arguably the wrong path, but it's part of the process of learning. But then this speaks to the cost factor of the actual time and temporal distribution of the path. So that's my first question. The second question actually is, can the software show any predictive value with regards to the user and the path the learning path that user takes?
Nate?
I
So I think
that second question you sort of require in terms of predictive value, you sort of need to know something about where they wanted to end up and how close they came to that. And that's really hard to predict because if you're, on the one hand, if you are doing it to explore, then you're learning to, you're just learning for the sake of learning and to explore, and you're not necessarily aiming for a certain point. Professionally, you tend to be taking things that you're aiming for a certain point, so it might be easier.
I think we look at ROI, around what path they take and what percentage do they accomplish and are able to do what they set out to do. But I think it's fascinating to look at it from your perspective. And I was thinking, Nate's company has been so great in helping us with a lot of things, especially around analytics and looking at things. And that's why I jumped at Nate to see we're not doing anything on our end around all of that. And I'm wondering if your company has or will be.
Yeah, it's something that is a very frequent request. People want to be able to track the progress of the students, not just through a single course, but through all the courses that they're taking. Did they complete it? Where did they get stuck? How did they score? So I think that's Insights solves some of that problem, but I think we need even more granular analytics. Looking at who are the at-risk students who are falling behind, and how can we help them and bolster them, and maybe provide suggestions like, hey, you're failing here. Maybe you need to take these other remedial courses.
And I'll step out of the edX world. Has anyone looked at metrics that matter? So it's used in corporate a lot. It's a measurement. They got bought by somebody. It may not even be NTM anymore. But basically, they had a process when you look at ROI, because in the corporate world, we don't want to train people. I don't care about training you. I want the end performance that I get after the training. And if I could do it with, like in the Matrix, where it's like, boop, I got it, we would do that. And Metrics That Matter did some surveys. So it does surveys with the manager and the learner. Can you apply this? Will it change what you do? How much did you apply it to drive ROI? And they looked at a couple. They look at a couple of things of what's the return, and then they look at scrap learning. So one of the concepts that they really pushed was when developing X amount of learning, what part of it is really scrap, meaning time people spent going through a training program that they couldn't apply to their job or didn't have an impact on their performance. And their goal, a lot of their metrics, because it was sometimes hard to prove ROI when you get to any sort of softer skills or compliance training, but scrap they could show. So if we put people through a 8-hour course all day, but only half of it was useful, you have a 50% scrap rate. And you focused on getting rid of scrap learning or helping people find better paths that had the least amount of scrap. So people said, yep, everything that you guided me to was useful. Then I have the least amount of scrap. That's one of the ways that they went at. And I thought that was a kind of a neat spin on it because they couldn't always show a dollar return on investment. They just wanted to focus on as efficient the training to end result that they could get, as little scrap as possible. So it's a concept that they did it all with surveys after the fact. And then you sat there every month and every quarter and measured and tweaked your courses. So build that into edX.
Well, it made me think of one example of Stanford built this giant course on databases, and they started getting requests from people who just said, well, I don't want to take the entire course. I just want to learn about NoSQL databases, or I just want to learn about this. So what they did is they took this giant course and they split it up into like a dozen little mini courses, And another thing that's really cool that Stanford did is they altered the default edX behavior to allow deep linking into those courses. So if you're talking earlier about Google, right? I just want to Google for my answer. So I could just Google, NoSQL databases, and it takes me right to the course unit.
We'll take that too.
And it just drops me right in there. So I don't have this registration wall preventing me from getting access to that deep linked content. So I think bite-sized learning, where I can just drop in and learn just this one little micro skill that I need to know to get my job done, and I don't have to enroll in this giant course. It's going to take me weeks to complete. I think is the direction you need to go in, at least for corporate learning.
Well, and that's why when I had that little spider diagram and some of the search, our goal is to let people come into a beginning search and then kind of decide, right? Here's the documentation. Here's a quick video, or no, I don't quite understand it. Let me go into the course, or start at the documentation, but say I don't get it. Trying to look at how we link those so that you could kind of move up the learning stack. Now, I went through your 2-minute video, still don't get it. Let me go to the 10-minute, and you kind of move up in your objectives until you get to the point that you learn what you need. So I'm getting the stare from Ned. So am I getting the hook, or you just?
I'm interested in having time to talk to more people
network.
individually too. So
okay.
But I really appreciate the depth that you've given us, and I know there's a lot of interest here. So I don't want to cut it off too much. Maybe some people can be over here and others can go over there, or something like that.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Glad to have you.